Hi and welcome to this video. I'm not sure about you, but sometimes when I'm building an app, there comes a point when I might run into a long-running process, or something that's going to take longer than potentially I would want, and therefore it's a useful useful thing to do is to let your user know that something is happening. So in this video, we're going to look at how we can build a waiting notifier. Which will be a reusable component, so we can use it throughout our app. Now, what is a waiting, or what is a notifier? Let's take a look at a couple of slides. On this slide, you can see a brief example, or a small example of a waiting notifier, and the idea of it is to provide feedback to the user of the app. Now, there are essentially two types of notifier. One is going to be passive, which is what we're going to be building today, and the second would be a notifier that's requesting the user to do something. So maybe clicking on OK or providing some more information. So without further ado, let's jump straight in. So we'll start by building a new app, a new Canvas app. And imagine we are building an app for office supplies. It'll be a Canvas app, obviously. Now, in our app, we're going to have some of this will be left to our imagination. So we're just going to add in a button onto the screen. And this button is what we're going to use to trigger our fictional long-running process. So imagine there's a button that the user clicks to place an order for some supplies. And that unfortunately needs to, take a while to complete, and therefore the user will be left waiting. Now in Power Apps, I'm sure you've probably seen them. There are the dots that kind of scroll or the marching ants across the top of the screen. However, the user's probably only going to stare at those for a few seconds until they start wondering if the app's broken, and that's where our notifier is going to come in. So let's call this trigger process. Now, one thing we'll do is we'll go into the components part of the tree view, and we will click on create a new component. Now, to ensure that everybody in the app knows, that there might be more than one person developing this app, so we'll provide a useful name. So let's call this waiting notifier. Now, the first thing we can do, I'm not sure if any of you have seen reusable components before, but they're incredibly cool feature of Canvas apps. Just to start off, we can add in some input properties or output properties. So we're going to manage the properties here. The first thing we're doing is going to make this a little bit smaller, because I think it's probably a little bit on the large side. And in fact, what we'll do is we will try to replicate this wait notifier here, where you can see we have a GIF that's that's indicating something's happening. We've got a message here, and then a more detailed message here. So we'll keep that in mind, and we'll continue building, and hopefully this will provide me with an opportunity to show off some of the capabilities of these components. So we'll add an input property, and our first property will be the detailed message. So let's call this the notifier message. And only for this property, we'll provide a description. Obviously, a best practice would be to do that for each property, but without wanting to have you spend too long watching me type, I'll just provide a description for this. This will be the message displayed to the app user. Now it's going to be an input property, and the type of property is going to be text. Now there are a number of different data types that we can actually pass in as an input property, so we'll leave it at that. So now we have a notifier message, and again, if we refer to our drop down here, we have some text that's nicely aligned in the center, so we'll copy that. So we'll add in a label. We'll put this down somewhere at the bottom. We'll make it the full width. It's more or less this. And what we'll do is we'll change the font to be Seeker UI. we'll align in the middle, and we will change the color somewhat to something a little bit less dark. Okay, so let's rename this label. So we'll call this LBL notifier message, so that we know exactly what this control does. And its text property, instead of it being text, we're actually going to wire that up to the component itself. So we're going to do CMP waiting notifier dot, and then we'll see the property that we've just created called notifier message. Now, one way for us to test this out is if we go back onto our screen and we go up to custom, you can see we have our waiting notifier, so we can pop that on the screen anywhere we choose. And currently that text is just says text, but that's fine, that's its default value. We could go down to the notifier message, and what we'll do is to make this like for like, we'll copy the text from here and we will paste that into our custom component. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So we'll go back into the component. Next thing, or something to consider, is we have a background color, we have the GIF, and we have this message here. Now, what might be really nice is if this message scrolls or rotates through a collection of different messages, kind of different headline messages. We'll save this as well. So we'll save that as a picture. Pop that into my. So that's called notifier GIF. So we'll pop that into our app in a moment. So all we really need is the background color, the text here that will rotate through a number of different messages, and the GIF file. So let's go back and crack on. Okay, so if we insert an image, and we'll put that in the middle. Something along the lines that we had before, make it slightly smaller, maybe 80 pixels by 80 pixels would be a little bit easier on the eye. Now it's image, so this, we're going to need another input property. So this time we'll do another input property, and we will call this the notifier GIF or the notifier image. It's an input property. I won't bother putting a description this time, as I mentioned before. This time we're going to use the image data type. And what we're going to have to do to test that out is if we go back into our app and we go to view media, or click on the media button here, we're going to actually upload an image, which will be from the pictures folder, and that's the notifier there. So there's our little image. Select our component, and we can now see we've got a notifier image. Now that's called notifier GIF.gif. So let's start typing that in. Notifier GIF. Is that going to work? Okay. Not quite with us at the moment. We'll come back and see what's occurring with that shortly. Image 1, sample image. Let's call this CMP. Oh, that's why it's not working, because we haven't actually wired up the control to the properties. If we go back to our screen now, there we go. Wonderful. There's our little pulsating GIF. Brilliant. Now we'll have a message at the top, and for that, let's just quickly rename this. So IMG notifier image. The next thing we're going to do is add in a new label. This is going to be the message that rotates at the top. Now, what I mean by rotating is we're going to this time we're going to have a table of messages and we will randomly select one of those messages every few seconds, so that as the user sees the waiting notifier, they understand that this is it just kind of reassures them that something is happening in the background, and to exercise some patience whilst it completes. So this time we'll make the text slightly larger, and maybe we'll make it semi-bold. We'll align it to the middle. Let's make it just a little bit bigger, and we'll change the color again to something more grey. Okay, so for this one, what we'll do is we'll create another property. This time we're going to create a table property. So if we go select table, and what we'll do here is we will call this rotating notifier title. All right, so rotating notifier title. Now, what we need to do in order to rotate this every few seconds is we're going to need to add in a timer control. So first off, let's rename the label. So this will be EL rotating message, and we will insert from the input drop down a timer. Now, don't worry too much about what we're going to be doing next. I'll talk you through it. We will hide this control so it's not visible. But what we want to do is essentially set some of the properties of it. So auto start, we want it to automatically start when the when the component is shown. So we'll set that to true. The next thing we're going to select control. The next thing we're going to try is the duration. Now that's 6,000. I'm not sure what that is, if that's every minute or every 6 seconds. But what we can do is we'll add in a property. So this time we'll do rotation frequency. So rotation frequency. So how often we want to rotate through a message. Let's make that message rotation frequency, and we'll make that a number, and then the duration we will associate with that property. So message rotation frequency, whatever that is. So it's currently 100. So that'll be interesting to see. Is it every second? Is it every millisecond? I'm not sure how the timer control operates. So we'll find out, which is part of the fun of doing this. So that's the duration. The on timer start is going to be the next interesting property to take a look at. So when the timer starts, what do we actually want to do? So what we'll do first is we will set, how should we approach this? Okay. Right, we're going to create a variable, and this will be selected message. Now, what we want to do is we have this table property on our component, and that's called the rotating notifier table. You can see this currently has a default value, or sorry, an example table. So let's start by getting our table right. So we're going to have a table, and it's going to have the title, and we'll put on here working on it as an ode to SharePoint. If you've ever worked with SharePoint, at least I have spent many years working with SharePoint, and also many hours of my life staring at screens that say working on it. So we'll have working on it, we'll have crunching data, and we'll have one more message that says, I don't know, doing something. Now these would obviously be more descriptive around what you're actually doing and what you want to tell your user. So let's cast the fun aside for a moment, and obviously in your implementation you would add proper messages. So what we want to do is select one of those randomly. So we're going to select the first. There are only 3 records, so we don't need to worry about performance here. And what we're going to do is we're going to shuffle this table. Now the table is currently the default property for, and then we'll go and select this title. So let's talk through that. So how I think this is going to work. Now we do have some red issues here. What does that tell us? It could just be a typo from my side, which I think it probably is. There we go. Okay, so let's walk through this code and hopefully it will make sense. Now, every X number of seconds, we want to restart the timer, which is another property we're going to need to do, which is I think restart or reset, I can't remember. But every time essentially this timer starts, we want to go to our table that will contain all of those messages, and we want to shuffle up the order and then select the first record. Now it doesn't guarantee that we will get a unique value, but what it does mean is that every X number of seconds we will have something new to display on the screen. So that's the first. The first function selects the first record of a table or a collection. Shuffle is essentially doing exactly what it says. It's shuffling up that table. That's the table that we're going to be connecting to, and we want the title value. Now we do want this to reset, don't we? And I think there is a reset. Let's repeat. So we want to repeat this indefinitely. So let's put that to true. And now the text, instead of it saying text, we can actually connect that to our variable global selected message. And that is a record dot title. Right. Moment of truth. So let's hide this. We don't want to see this for now. Let's change its visible to false. We know it's there. And also we actually want to add in a background color. So let's change the background color of our loader to grey. There we go. So now when we look at our screen, let's play, see if anything happens. Whoa. So, well, we can see that code's working, and it's working pretty quickly. So that default value of 100, we actually want to change that. So if you remember, we had the message rotation frequency. Let's try from 100, which is really quick. Let's try it 2000 and see if that's something that's slightly more bearable. That's not too bad, is it? So as you can see, it's looping through, it's shuffling that collection, that table, and selecting the first value. Okay, now the last bit to wrap up this demo really is around controlling the visibility of this. So what we will do here is we'll change the visibility to be a local variable. Now local variables will be associated with the screen, so let's add in another screen, and I'll show you why in a second. We'll select the screen in this instance. Now we'll go down to onVisible, which is the event where we actually want to create our context variable. So we'll call this LOC because it's localized to this screen, and we'll call this notifier visibility. Now by default we'll set it to be false. Okay, what have I done there? Oh, that should be that. Right, so we're going to set that to be false by default. Now if we flick between screens and then go to view variables, we'll see that our variable has now been created because that onVisible property event was actually triggered. So it's visible property, instead of it being true, we're going to set it to be local notifier visibility. And now comes the moment of truth. So in our app we have our button, and our button is going to run a fictional flow, which we don't actually have. So we'll only be able to take this so far, but essentially what we want to do is in our onSelect event, we would run the long running process, and we will change the variable. So the variable is going to be local to be true. Okay, the long running process would complete. And then just to wrap this up, we would set the variable back to false. So that would be the logic here, but we can only run one part of it because I don't have the rest. So let's preview our app, trigger the process. There's our waiting notifier. The process completes. Then we would set that back to be false. Okay, so we would change the visibility of our loading screen, waiting notifier, sorry, from true to false. Okay, I hope that was useful for you. So just a quick summary. We ran through initially what what notifiers are and how they're useful. So if you do have something in your app that's taking more than a couple of seconds to complete, it's always worthwhile considering building a notifier of some form so that your users understand that the app is in a particular state or an event is waiting to complete. In our demo today, we ran through the creation of a passive notifier. And if you do want to know more about notifiers, I've put a link here to the Nielsen Norman group, who are like UI UX industry leaders, and they provide some really good information around notifiers and all of the different ways that they can be implemented if it's of interest to you. So without further ado, I'll let you get back to your day. Thank you very much for your time.